Welcome to Building Wealthy Habits podcast. Now, this features content and conversations with me, Randy Barkley, Jeremiah Lee, along with Laura Lee. On this podcast, we share financial advice from a team of certified financial planners, including a California licensed attorney, an MBA professional with collective experience of over 40 years.
All right, on this week's episode, we are talking to business owners who are moving into a growth phase for their business. There has been an industry of fractional CFOs that's been on the rise, and we're going to talk about what need they fill for growing businesses. And if you identify with that profile, this is an episode for you. So Jeremiah, to kick us off, let's dive in and let's talk about, if you're the business owner, how do you know when or if or what might be the progression towards hiring someone like a fractional CFO?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like most entrepreneurs or business owners we work with, when they first started the business, it was just them, right? They're in Excel or whatever system they're using, and they're figuring out their business. Yeah, QuickBooks, right? They're becoming They're becoming a master of QuickBooks. They're figuring this stuff out. But as people move towards being a growing and a successful business, it transitions from just being like a mom and pop or a garage company to a real business. And so first thing I often see is getting a CPA or a tax preparer in there. They used to do their own taxes, and now they bring in somebody who's going to do their taxes.
That's and they're going to provide some insight into how to keep track of your books. For example, we don't want to mingle personal and business expenses. We want to keep those bank accounts separate as a recommendation your CPA make, the foundational elements of keeping a P&L statement, et cetera.
Yeah, that's kind of the first level up, right? For a lot of folks who are just doing a startup, it might be commingled in the sense of what's personal, what's business. I don't know. We're just trying to make it work. Mm-hmm. But getting to a point to say, these are my business accounts. I'm doing QuickBooks or whatever I'm doing to kind of track things. I now have a tax preparer who's helping me get appropriate deductions for my business. So that's kind of the first level up. And most people I imagine listening, they have a tax preparer, right? That they've passed that first hurdle. The second one we often see is now, hey, we need a bookkeeper. We need someone who's either internal or external that's going to track all of these different invoices.
Right. It's just taking too much time to track our invoices, our expenses. We just need somebody to help do this work for us.
Yep. And sometimes it's a remote person. Often for people we see, clients we work with, it's an internal person that they're entering. And it's a little different here. And here's kind of the first split a little bit. If you're in the service industry and you just provide services, some of your biggest items are accounts receivable and payroll. That's kind of what you're looking at. If you're in the manufacturing industry, you're going to have, costs of goods sold. You're going to have supply lines as well as invoices for products going out. So depending how many people you need here is a little bit different by industry. But that's kind of that next
equipment too. Once you start dealing with depreciation schedules, inventory, if you're selling products, it can get kind of complicated really quickly for someone that doesn't have a background in accounting.
And for a business owner, some like that. They won't have their fingers in that. I'd say for most, they're out trying to make sales, trying to develop better products. They're trying to run the business in that way. And they're not always focusing in the same way on the books. So the first one was a tax preparer. Second one, kind of a bookkeeper. The third one I often see is kind of what you were saying, is kind of a controller. To say, when we got a lot of moving parts, we now need someone who's not just entering in the transactions and tracking it, they're actually controlling the cash flows. And companies at that point start talking a lot more about how much money is coming in, when is it coming in, how much is going out, when does it go out, and it kind of lining up their cash flow needs along with kind of the business. So that's kind of in my mind, some of the levels that most businesses kind of go through initially. But then they get to this point to where they say, hey, we don't just need someone else to track what's doing. We need to be more strategic about ordering supplies ahead. We need to really tune up our finances to make the profit, the bottom line, something that we're excited about, because we're not just in a throw at the wall, see what sticks phase. We're at a real business where real jobs are on the line. And so then they start looking at a CFO. And a CFO is not, in my mind, is not just a glorified bookkeeper. It's someone who can be a strategic thinker with the business owner and say, hey, here's not just what we're doing today, but here's our next 5-year plan. Here's how we want to develop our finances, develop our payroll structures, get different terms with our vendors to really maximize how we grow.
Right.
And
taking a look at software, like intelligent systems across, multiple, if you have employees that are all centralized in one location or multiple different locations, you might be dealing with like foreign currency if you're buying products abroad or you offer services abroad. You might be, there's a lot that can go into this sort of position.
That's right. And then they can be expensive. I mean, a lot of the folks in a business, in a well-developed business, after the CEO, that highest paid is usually the CFO, the chief financial officer. So it's a big sticker price and it's a key person. And some businesses are ready for that. They want to hire somebody. They need a strategic partner. They're going to go from there. I would say there's a moment where they're not quite ready to bring on a big payroll. They're not certain they need that. They, as the owner, kind of do some of that forecasting and planning. And so that's where what we're talking about today is this idea of a fractional CFO. It's someone who you don't have their full time. Maybe you have 5 hours a week, or maybe you have, they only have 5 clients. So maybe you're one of their 5 clients who are here. Man, I mean, that could be so useful to get someone who's experienced and really familiar with not just how the accounting works, but also how the P&L, like what it's telling you, almost the heartbeat of your organization through the financials, someone who can come alongside and help tune that up and also help run that.
Mm-hmm. So the market recognized this gap, this broad gap between going from a controller sort of position on your staff to a CFO, and how many growing businesses start to sense that need. They're not quite ready to fully launch into hiring a CFO. Like you said, it's probably the second, one of the top highly compensated employees. And so it's going to be a huge investment. They're not quite ready to make that leap, but they need somebody that can kind of stair-step them from controller into some of this more strategic thinking, right? Growing businesses are starting to look at different sorts of lending options. They might be looking at something like acquisition. And so how do you oversee that kind of deal making process? You've got to hire some attorneys to help make that happen, right? Like it's
a lot.
It's stepping towards a more strategic position, but somebody who still understands all of those other needs that we've talked about before: the bookkeeping, the payroll, the accounts receivables, the inventory, all of that as well.
Yeah, I like your comment. Even just as you mentioned the bank, like as people move up that kind of sophistication level as their business grows, to be running the business and the one dealing with the bank, dealing with whatever mortgage things you have set up, lines of credit, to be dealing with potential acquisitions, like it becomes a lot. And for one owner to try and run that themselves without feeling the support, it can get really almost like lonely, lonely at the top to say, I'm carrying all this weight. My team is doing the business, but I'm trying to work not in the business, just on the business to make it better.
And I think what's hard is not for business owners who are maybe less familiar with finances or that don't have an accounting background. It's for those who do. Because for a long period of time, you're going to believe like, I can do this, because you might understand it, or you might have a functional knowledge. You can kind of get by without hiring a CFO. But in reality, as a business owner, you're going to be, I'm speaking to the majority, your time is spent gathering new business and growing the operation. So even if you understand the financial aspect of your business, you're going to not have the time necessary to invest at the level that's required as your business continues to grow.
Yeah. And I think I agree with that entirely. And I think it's at what point is this kind of hamstringing and slowing down the growth because the owner is trying to do it themselves? And at what point is it strategic to bring on someone else to kind of offload some of these high level strategic tasks so you can focus on others? And I had a client, and this was real, I think it's useful. He has basically a support group with other executives, and they've got to a point now, it's about, I think, 6 other executives that they meet together every quarter. And they're in similar industries, but different parts of the country. So they're not competing directly, but they have similar types of business. And man, it was interesting talking with them. He said they open their books to each other. They open their financials, and they're able to look at each other and say, wow, your costs of goods sold are so much higher than mine. Or, hey, you might need to talk to our payroll person because that's not a problem for us anymore. That's easy. Or are you using this technology? And he's saying it's very valuable but he has that as a resource. And so some people in their industries they can create some sort of a network. We're working with other CEOs. They have that strategic insight. They also have, helpers in their staff. There's others that don't. They just don't have access to that. So bringing on someone like a fractional CFO I feel can really elevate their future, elevate the sophistication that they're working with and elevate their future. I think to me, it was somewhat of a surprise. I think it's odd to have that good of a network of other CEOs that you can relate to. So for most folks, they have to figure that out and find who is my strategic thinker, who is my resource to really move me to the next level.
Yeah. And so for some of our listeners, you might have heard of this term of a fractional CFO. I was not super familiar with that industry. It's come up in conversation a few times with some of our business owner clients. It came up recently with a colleague of ours in the industry that functions now as a fractional CFO. And so we were just talking in general about the industry. So to prepare for this recording, I did some research. Fractional CFOs are generally serving businesses that are worth 1 million to 70 million. That these are averages, but the industry itself of these companies that offer fractional CFO services has grown by 20% in the last year. So there is demand in the marketplace for these roles. And what I thought was interesting was when I started to dig a little bit deeper and look at some of the profiles of people that serve as fractional CFOs. They can come from different backgrounds. Obviously, most of them have a CPA sort of background or some knowledge of accounting, but there was quite a few that were retired CFOs. And, on LinkedIn or wherever I was reading some of their commentary, and it seems like they were ready to kind of step away from sort of the politics of their position when they were a full-time CFO. Maybe they don't want to work the long hours. They don't want to have something that's as demanding. They don't want to have to deal with all the political rigor of their role. And so kind of in terms of semi-retirement, they move into this position of a fractional CFO, and they're working with a growing business. At that point, maybe a little bit less complexity than what they've been accustomed to towards the end of their full-time career. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
It's super interesting. And I think for someone else who might be listening is if they are in a role of a controller or a CFO and they say, well, I've grown with this company through these phases. We're an established company. I'm looking at my retirement. Man, that could be a different view of your retirement to say, I don't want to be working with this, large, established, complex company anymore. I want to retire. But wouldn't it be fun to hop in with some, companies that are, 5 million in revenue and to really help get them to that next phase when there's, young, there's vitality, there's hope for the future, there's growth, and to guide someone through that, man, that could be, I think, very satisfying and fulfilling for someone who's had a career as a CFO and wants to step back, but also wants to still be involved and use that expertise they've developed. So, anyone who's in that role,
a business owner who's trying to grow a business to be able to tap into that level of experience, but for not having to pay the full price tag of a full-time CFO, as they're kind of incrementally stepping towards this need. A lot of these service companies that offer fractional CFO services have a scale and a range of services that they provide. So even as your company grows, your need at day one for this position might be different than your need down the road as your business continues to grow. So you could start with something kind of similar to what the controller does, cash flow forecasting. You're going to move into financial modeling, maybe some fundraising, or new capital lending, mergers and acquisitions, accounting, tax preparation, et cetera, et cetera. So there is like a laundry list of the different service options, and they have different packages or kind of piecemeal depending on what company you're going with. FreshFPA.com is one resource that I looked up. The other one I spent a lot of time with was AscentCFO.com. These are just two examples of larger companies that move in this space and good examples of kind of, how you might onboard or hire a fractional CFO.
Yeah. I really like your comment about mergers and acquisition. I'll tell a quick story. I was working just at the law firm helping people buy and sell businesses. There was a company, they would do injection molding manufacturing, so plastic parts. And the person who had been the kind of the CFO role, he knew that as they sold the business, they were looking to sell it to a private equity company, that he was going to get fired. It was very normal, like, that I'm going to, help this business merge into this larger business, and then my job is going to become redundant. But the CEO of the business that was being sold was very bright. He basically turned to his CFO, said, hey, if you walk me through this, if you get our company from here to here, and put together basically a bonus package for him, and said, I acknowledge you acknowledge that once we merge, my role and your role is going to go away. And the owner who was selling it, he was going to retire, but the CFO wasn't quite ready to retire, but he knew he wasn't going to have a role in the new company. So it was a brilliant plan, I think, because he set out to say, I know the next 6 months are vital, to our company's progression. And I know it's going to be a lot of work, and I know we need the CFO to do it, but I know you're also not going to have a future job here. So what does it do? So it was a great idea. We put together, as the attorney side, we put together a package for him. So he not only got through all the lead up to the sale, but stayed on a couple months after the sale to make sure everything was smooth. And then he rolled off. It was just a great, I think, structure. So the same idea, even someone who might say with a CFO, it's not necessarily that I need a CFO for day-to-day businesses. You might have a big bank loan or a bonding agreement or a merger coming up and say, I need somebody who can get me through the next 6 months. One, to have the knowledge and the insight, but two, just to be boots on the ground to get this done with me. And I think it's a great way to view some of these CFOs of, one, to help you, tiptoe into the next level of sophistication. So you don't have to have the full salary, like you said, or just to say, I've got this 6 months where I really need somebody on board that can get us from point A to point B. And then ideally for a lot of these businesses, they grow, they want to have a CFO someday. They want to have a full person in that role, but they may not quite be fully ready. And some of these options, man, that could be so useful to get a CFO who has been through what you're about to go through, either lending or bonding or a merger, and can help guide you through. I mean, I would think well worth the cost to get that done.
Well, and the idea of hiring a fractional CFO has this impression of impermanence, right? You don't expect a fractional CFO to last forever in your company. You expect to grow to a certain level where then you can hire a full-time employee. I like the example that you shared because it exposes how strategic a CFO role is for a critical juncture in a business. And that CEO made the decision to really go arm in arm, shoulder to shoulder. We're in the trenches together. We're going to get through this because we both have a similar goal in mind. That sounds to me like a great visionary. And so I think similarly for a fractional CFO, you can kind of identify the vision ahead of time, which is essentially to grow them out of a position, because there would then be a need for a full-time CFO. But in the interim, that time span could be years. I think it can vary greatly depending on the industry and the growth trajectory and, all those other factors.
And we're talking a little bit about these high growth, mid cycle businesses. I imagine there's a number of businesses who go through that. They bring in a fractional CFO, they grow to a certain point, and they say, this is really good for us. We're at a good spot where, good role in our market, good employees, and we don't necessarily need to keep growing, or we're not able to keep growing either way, and may continue with a fractional CFO. It might be something that you have someone who gives you 20 hours every week of real great insight, and that could continue for years, or it could just be a stepping stone as you grow into another company.
So that's an interesting comment, and maybe a reason why to look at these larger service companies that offer this service, because if that specific professional CFO that you're working with, either the needs that you have expand beyond what they're willing to offer, or I'm looking at the interest of longevity. If that fractional CFO is a semi-retired CFO, they're probably wanting to fully retire at some point. And so they may not be there for the long term of your company growth. And so hiring maybe a service company that offers this would give you a little bit more, tenure between, they have multiple different employees that could fit that need for you.
No, that's great. I think it's a good option. And I think for anyone who's a business owner who's thinking about this, it's a worthwhile item to consider. Where would this add value to my company? Where is it not needed yet? Or where was this needed 3 years ago? And I should have brought this person in. And maybe not even knowing that you can get a fractional CFO. You can get someone who just does the amount of either hours or time or areas that you need, rather than hiring a full CFO position.
And so I think it's good to be clear with our listeners at this point. In the business that we do as financial advisors to business owners, we oftentimes sit down with them, even maybe they're at different phases of their business cycle. And so we've sat down with clients who are just starting their business, and we're talking to them about how to comprise a P&L sheet, Excel spreadsheet, talking about using QuickBooks, like some basic recommendations. We've connected them with CPA firms that we work closely with in terms of recommendations. But we as a company don't offer these fractional CFO services. This would be an example of one where we might make that recommendation. Hey, we notice looking at both your personal and your professional financial life that you might have gotten to this point where the services that a fractional CFO provides would be something that you find of value. And we then can act as our interest is looking after the personal finances for the most part and making sure that they align with the professional finances. And so we might be able to offer some advice or input or even just be a third party to kind of review the overall household financial information, I guess I would say.
Yeah, that's a good caveat. Because for us, where I love to work, where you love to work, where we exist as a company is where the business, whether you're a professional working or a business owner, where that turns it and translates into your personal finances. We've said it before, but we've had a number of clients who they had the best year ever for their business and their personal feels just the same. And we say, oh, we need to help you tune this up because as your business is growing, it should be making your life better and building a future that you were excited about. And,
right.
Our role in that is often that translation from business income, how it's going to get to build your personal life so that your personal finances are everything you dream it could be.
Right, exactly. So if you are listening to this and you or a friend of yours is kind of in this position where you're wondering, that's kind of a good idea. I wonder if I should explore that more. Come talk to us. Like, we're your people and we get to kind of troubleshoot. We get to ideate. We get to problem solve together. And ultimately, we always like to reiterate to our clients, like, this is your life, your vision, your dreams, your goals. Like, we're here to give you all the information that helps support you in making an informed best decision for your financial future. And we realize that that is a combination of both your professional life and your personal life as well. So that just about wraps us up. If you need more information about a fractional CFO or just financial planning in general, give us a call. Visit our website. We're tricordadvisors.com. Jeremiah, do you have anything else for our listeners today?
No, I just appreciate everyone listening in and knowing that there's more out there. You're not alone. You don't have to be lonely in trying to figure this out yourself, whether it's us or whether we can provide other resources for you. Like, get the help you need so you can get the growth that you're looking to achieve.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening. We have a few more things to let you know about before we go. Podcast reviews really help us to serve more people and get this information into the hands of the people who need it. Please leave us a review. Even if it's not 5 stars, we welcome the feedback.
And we invite you to let us know what topics you would like to hear more about or what would benefit the people in your life who you're closest to. We have more resources online. Those resources are designed to help you share this great information easily with people in your life. To access those resources, please visit tricordadvisors.com.
Often we hear from clients that they wish they had talked to us sooner. If that's you, we'd be thrilled to see how financial planning can benefit your life. Email us at contact@tricordadvisors.com or simply click on the link in the show notes.
This show was produced by Graham Gardner at Model FA. Find out more about how to create a podcast for your financial planning business by visiting modelfa.com. We love creating content that's useful, resourceful, and maybe even a little entertaining. We want to make this mega universe of financial topics and advice applicable and helpful to your life.
Remember, at Tricord Advisors, we are your future's best ally.